in coming together with essentially 5 different skill sets, what we wanted to do was change what you see when you Google Rwanda. For many of us who've grown up outside of Rwanda, and even those who are here, there's so much that we could see happening within the country. But when it came to the storytelling around Rwanda, the visuals were essentially what they used to call the 2Gs, which is guerrillas and the genocide.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out this interview. My name is Fahad, and I'm your host. Today, I'm joined by Joan Mazimhaka, and she is the CEO and co-founder of Illume Creative Studio that is based out of Kigali, Rwanda. We're going to be talking about, what Illume is and what they do. And also, Joan is going to be giving us a story behind her moving back to Rwanda and starting a company. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. And I know it was last time we were supposed to talk. There was some technical problems with the network.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, but we made it happen. Thanks.
Yes, good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with you telling us about Illume Creative Studio and what it is and what you do and who you serve.
Okay, sure. So Illume Creative Studio is a communications agency. We have been working here in Rwanda for 9 years, going into our 10th year at the end of this year. So what we do is content creation. We do content marketing. So we work with video, photography, graphic design, and then we use PR and social media marketing to get the messages out for clients, who could be organizations, individuals, anybody who wants to get their story out. We started this company with friends. There are 5 co-founders of Illume, all of us who had returned back to Rwanda from different countries. And in coming together with essentially 5 different skill sets, what we wanted to do was change what you see when you Google Rwanda. For many of us who've grown up outside of Rwanda, and even those who are here, there's so much that we could see happening within the country. But when it came to the storytelling around Rwanda, the visuals were essentially what they used to call the 2Gs, which is guerrillas and the genocide. And it wasn't telling the full story of how the country was diverse, how the people within it were diverse, anything behind the arts and creative industries, behind business. It wasn't really there. So we sought to do that. We wanted to change the landscape. So we did it through our own platforms at Illume Creative Studio, and then beyond that through our clients. So people come to us basically when they have a project, an idea, an event, something that they need to tell the story behind. And we have found that working with companies that are based in Rwanda or based on the continent is actually a great way for us to showcase what is happening on the African continent here and now. And so this goal that we had to change what you see when you Google Rwanda has gone beyond to not only change what you see when you Google Africa, but we want to do it not just for the world, but for the Africans themselves. Those of us who are living on the continent and who are in the diaspora need to learn more about what's happening across the different countries and cultures on the continent. And so it's a bigger dream of ours now that we've reached our 10th year going forward, is to be able to amplify those voices, to empower creative people through skill sharing, through master classes, and developing the skills of the creative industry on the continent. And we want to be able to be a part of that storytelling, um, part of storytelling, because we feel like it's the way that it can tie us across borders.
Yeah.
We have worked not just in Rwanda, but in Ghana, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Uganda, on different projects. And whenever we go there, we seek out the people who are really making those cities vibrant and lively, and we try to showcase it as much as possible. So that's what we do on the business side. We have the agency who works with organizations and different clients, and then we have our studio where we try to come up with more original and creative content.
Perfect. That's a great story behind your brand. So you wanted to change the image of Rwanda in Africa by
Mm-hmm.
using your skills, and created a company to help tell the real story of Africa and African brands, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So you grew up in Canada,
I
right?
did.
Yeah.
I grew up in a
So
place called Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
never heard
It
of
is
it.
right in the middle. No one ever has. Few people have, but it's right
Yeah.
in the middle of Canada. Yeah.
Okay. So how long were you there?
I was there for most of my young adult life. We moved there. So I was born in Uganda, and then we lived in Kenya, and then moved to Canada when I was around 6.
Hmm.
And so I spent most of my young adulthood there.
Yeah.
And so that's where I studied. That's where my family was. And then we moved to Rwanda. We first came to visit um, in 1995, and then again in 97, and then I moved here properly um, in 2001. And so I came because of my father,
Yeah.
because he politely encouraged us to come and see what the new Rwanda would be like.
Yeah.
And after I graduated from university and I was trying to see what options I had, he said you should try to come to my sisters and I, that we should come and see what Rwanda's like, stay here for a little while, and see if we want to be here. And then we did. We came and I came to try it out for a few months, and then I just really never left.
Great. So so you came back to Rwanda in 2001, and um, worked, did different jobs, and you were also at some point you
Mm-hmm.
worked for RDB as division
Mm-hmm.
manager doing marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you started Illume Creative Studio, right?
Yeah.
With
Yes.
that, with four other co-founders.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you find them? Were they people who also used to live abroad and returned home with different skills,
Yeah.
and decided they wanted to do, uh, to use their skill sets to tell the story of Rwanda?
Yes, essentially. So, yes, I started working different jobs when I came here. And all of them kind of fell in line with work that was leading towards the economic development of the country. And I found my first job put me within the tourism sector in terms of we're looking at the different pillars that help drive Rwanda's economy, and tourism was among those.
Yeah.
So, just as a junior staff member, that's the industry that I was assigned to with a company I used to work for called OTF on the frontier. And that taught me a lot about um, the different strategies that would be used to help a nation drive a nation's economy forward. And so from there, I had an experience with the tourism industry, and I went to work for what was known then as ORTPN, which is the Tourism Board. And that
Yeah.
eventually merged into RDB along with the investment board and the um, ICT, different national organizations came together to form RDB.
Yeah.
So you see, this is revealing how long I've been here and how old I
Yeah.
am. So
Yeah.
yeah, so they merged into RDB, and then I was in the tourism sector of RDB, and it was a really great time to be there because we were doing a lot to drive the industry forward. And at the time, when I first started with working within the tourism industry, and when Rwanda first started going to trade fairs globally, people thought it was like a joke. Because as I
Yeah.
mentioned, people only knew about the genocide. So they just thought
Yeah.
it was impossible that anybody would want to come to Rwanda for leisure.
Yeah.
And so there were two campaigns, one to educate the global public about Rwanda's tourism offering, and the second one to educate the local public about it. Because
Yeah.
people also didn't understand the value of what we had in our national parks and that Rwanda could be a tourism destination. So it was a
Yeah.
big fight, it was a big push, and it was highly rewarding when the tourism industry started to grow, when Rwanda won awards for its tourism presentations across the world, and then also when tourists started to consider this as one of the coveted places to visit.
Yeah.
And so when I was working in RDB and I was on the marketing side, we had a project which was the Pan African Dance Festival. And with that came the need to bring together a lot of people to make it work. It was a big festival that had been given to Rwanda by the AU, and it hadn't
Yeah.
happened for a couple of years. So we had to essentially it was working with countries from across the continent who were going to come to Rwanda. They were going to organize dance performances. We had to do dance classes, concerts. It was a huge week-long event. So I needed support. So one of the first people I contacted was my sister because I needed support with some of the artist relations, and then contacted a few of our other friends and colleagues. And then we were working together. I was also working together with my colleagues at RDB on this. And so I needed a photographer for the event, and people told me to contact this one person who lived in Belgium, but he was Rwandan, and I should give him a call so he could also help us cover the events. So I contacted him, and he said he was looking for a reason to come back to Rwanda and possibly stay in Rwanda. So this was a good opportunity. And then my sister had been living here for a little bit. She moved here about a couple of years after I did. And then I had the colleagues we were working with. So as we were working on this project, it was late nights, it was long days, it was a lot of moving up and down. And we kind of created a group of us who had a lot of long conversations about all these things that we were doing that were going to build Rwanda. What people were going to see coming from Rwanda was going to be something that surprised them. But we weren't really telling these stories. As a nation, the government and our president was doing a great job of showing how Rwanda was growing. But in terms of all the small things that seem small in the grander scheme of things, our creativity, our innovation, that wasn't really being talked about. So from that small group of people, we started having those conversations about what would it mean to be the people who created these stories? What would it mean to be the people who did this through marketing, through film, through photography, through social media? And that's how Illume was initially formed. And then we had another good friend of ours who's been working in marketing in the banking sector, in the telecom sector, and she joined. And then another colleague who was in Canada as well. He's a photographer. And so he moved back to Rwanda. Again, also, he took a one-way ticket to come to Rwanda and see what was possible. And so we joined forces. So my sister and my other friend of ours had been here for a few years. We'd been here at the beginning of all of these industries. And then our other two colleagues had just moved back. But all of us had the intention of coming and staying. And it's funny, I suppose sometimes you feel like you have options to go to different places and to try different things. But when you're coming back to a country that for so long you weren't allowed to be in, or a country that was so divided and going through so much, it feels like you sometimes owe it to yourself to see what is possible at home. And keeping in mind, I was not born here, I didn't grow up here. This wasn't really home for me until I returned, until I came back. And so it's that feeling I think that we all had of seeing possibility, the obvious connection that you have with your homeland. And I want to say for some people, it's worth it to come and try and stay and build. And for others, it's better for them to be where they are and come to visit or invest or support in other ways. I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do it. I just know that that's how we came together and that's what we wanted to achieve and that's what we've been working towards for the past 10 years.
Thanks for giving us a backstory on how Illume came to be and how you organized yourselves and started something and uh, started helping out these companies and also telling the Rwanda story. Yeah, so what would you tell people who want to do the same, who are in the diaspora and they want to do something on the continent, but they're thinking about doing something on the continent, but they um, they can't come there, how can they make an impact? How can
Mm.
they invest? Do you see any like opportunities on how they can contribute without necessarily being in Rwanda or Africa?
Oh, definitely. I think a big part of it is at least to come and experience some part of it, even if it is for a visit.
Yeah,
I say that because we are working very hard on storytelling and making sure that we are amplifying voices, but genuine voices of how people are are living here, working here, and what they're working on. If you want to invest in a tech company that's building out of here and they're doing a great job of explaining in terms of what the tech is, what they want to do. It's always good to come and try to experience what their surrounding is like so that you don't put your own assumptions onto someone else's environment. So it's good to also, before you know, sometimes you don't know what you want to invest in, but you know you want to be a contributor to the country, to the continent, to the country that you love. So it's good to come and experience what is possible because you may come up with something on your own that you would want for other people to manage here, but
yeah,
it could be something that someone has not thought of yet, or you could contribute to somebody's idea.
yeah,
I think it's very possible to be able to be a part of Africa's development without having to live here.
yeah,
I am a fan of being here because
yeah,
sorry, because honestly, I believe that um, this is where I want to build, and this is
yeah,
how I can do it.
yeah,
And I think, especially with so there's so much turmoil going on in the world, and it's hard to know where you want to place yourself and where you want to be and how you want to be, how you want to raise your children. So I think it's a great option if you can to try to come and visit the place and see what it is like and how you would want to contribute to it.
yeah,
Alternatively, if you can't, it is completely understandable. I think people have the opportunity, just do as much research as possible. There are so many voices that are out there, and as part of what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're getting as much of that information out to people as possible. There are
yeah,
people in the event space. We're creating uniquely African events and concerts and managing musicians. And so if you want to go into the music space, you have to see what's happening on the west in West Africa versus East Africa versus South. There's so many different sounds. There's so many different ideas. And if you are looking to build in terms of actually physically build neighborhoods, buildings, apartments, if you want to get into real estate, you have to know what the environment is like, who you need to talk to, how things happen, because it's different wherever you may want to go.
yeah,
So for me, I don't think that there are any limitations for how you can be a part, how you
yeah,
can contribute. I don't think there are any limitations for how you can be, um,
yeah,
how you can give back to your home. It's
yeah,
just a matter of maybe trying to understand the place first. I
yeah,
think maybe some people might make a mistake of coming with their own ideas to just put in a place
hmm,
and not really understanding the environment. We make the
hmm,
mistake sometimes of thinking that the environment has to adjust to us
yeah,
rather than the other way around. And so I think
hmm,
that's something people can just should be a little bit careful about. But
yeah,
I think it's really possible for Africans in the diaspora to be a part of this without having to be here.
yeah.
I hope I didn't do too much talking around myself.
No, that's perfect. I mean, all people that I've interviewed, they say, hey, you have to come here and visit and see what problems exist, and then
Hmm.
see which ones you'll be motivated to solve. See what
Yeah.
opportunities that exist, and then pick what problems that you want to solve. And I think
Hmm.
that's very crucial. Yourself, you came and witnessed what was happening in Rwanda. You saw like what was lacking and what existed, and then you decided to step up and solve that problem.
Hmm.
So the creative industry, storytelling, obviously you're doing it in your company. Do you see, for people who are creatives or who are interested in that industry? Are there areas that are lacking where those people can come and fill those halls?
I think the creative industry in Rwanda right now is experiencing like a renaissance period. The
Mm-hmm.
performing artists, the musicians, um, different creatives are have a space right now to shine. We've kind of built this platform for ourselves, and it's a lot of not just young and new artists, but a lot of artists who've been established for a while who are creating and also opening up their spaces to allow more people to come through.
Yeah.
When there is some support, but when the support is limited because other things really take priority, you have to build for yourself. And so that's what Rwanda's creative industry has been doing. We've been kind of building for ourselves, and it's been working out well.
Yeah.
If people want to come and invest in it, there are very many opportunities in terms of creating spaces, actual physical spaces for people to be able to perform or record or rehearse.
Yeah.
There's the opportunity to actually invest in artists so that you're putting in your money for people to produce, to make productions, whether it's records or plays or films. You can be an investor in any one of those projects. You
Yeah.
could create grant opportunities for people to be able to apply and use that money to build themselves in terms of job creation, in terms of creating opportunities for people to do crafts, to make clothes. Fashion
Yeah.
designers are actually contributing quite a lot to job creation in the economy. And some
Yeah.
people just might need that boost to be able to pass it along.
Yeah.
The creative industry has done quite a lot, yes, in terms of it's more, some of it is part of the informal economy. Some of it like aligns in terms of the gig economy where people can get jobs here and there, but it's not a steady um, paying monthly everyday job. But that work sustains them and their family, or it at least sustains their creative drive while they do something else. So there
Yeah.
are different ways we can invest into the creative industries that would enable us to continue to do the work that we do, to continue to provide jobs for people, and to build as part of a chain that actually facilitates even higher, even those industries that are higher along the economic chain. For example, the tourism value chain is full of designers and handicraft people and painters and dancers and different service providers, DJs, all of them contribute to the tourism industry itself, whether they're performing during events and conferences or if they are part of a hotel's regular performance schedule, if they have designed the uniforms for the hotels, if they've created the art that hangs in the hotels, all of the things around the tourism industry, people contribute to that.
Yeah.
Even the actors that perform during some of the in some of the cultural villages. These are all people who are helping boost different levels of the economy, and they could use a boost themselves.
Yeah.
So I would say that the creative industries is really thriving right now, but we could always use something that puts us further up.
Yeah. Yeah. We can always use more help spreading the word and telling stories of
Yeah.
Rwanda and Africa in general.
And I think one big thing is also that there is a way that you have to trust that Rwandans are the best at telling Rwandan stories. That
Yeah.
Ghanaians are the best at telling Ghanaian stories. You know that South Africans are best at telling South African stories. So even if you want to come and contribute, the importance of listening to the people who are actually doing
Yeah.
creating the art is really, really key.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in 2017, I heard of Illume Creative Studio from a photographer that I was working with. He was going to shoot my wedding, and
Okay.
yeah, he was telling me, showing me the pictures that you've taken at the Akagera National Park, showing me like, hey, this like these people are the best in Rwanda at what they do. And you had like an amazing pictures and stories describing the pictures and all that. Yeah, so you're really good at at what you do. Definitely keep it up. And
Thank you for that.
yeah, you're writing a great story for Rwanda, definitely. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah, so you've done this. You've run the company for 8 to 10 years, 8 to 10 years,
Yeah, it's going to be 10 years
10
in
years.
November.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you've learned some lessons. You've you've faced some challenges. What kind of advice would you give to people who are planning to start their companies? It could be in any industry, and
Mhm.
especially, let's say, in Rwanda, since we're talking about Rwanda.
Yeah.
Uh, what are the things would they keep in mind? Things that will help them to succeed rather than failing.
Okay. Well, when it comes to business, I think we all know that there's so many different circumstances that can create success or failure. But there are some key things that you have to know. You have to know your market. Whatever you're starting in, you have to know whether or not people actually want to use the product or service. Is there a gap in the market that you are fulfilling? Is there a question that you're answering? Is there a need? People may not even know that they need, but you've seen how the behavior of society is moving and changing, and you want to fulfill that need. So you have to see whether or not, from that perspective alone, your business has a chance of of being successful. A
Yeah.
second thing to note is that um, I think whatever environment you're in, you have to be flexible and ready to pivot with your business, because you can start with a business plan that's like structured and you know where you want to go. But in a few months, the environment could change. In, for example, right now with the whole
COVID.
pandemic,
Yeah.
I mean, the pivot is so key and so necessary. And you have to just be prepared to look at the bigger picture, to open yourself up to whatever possibilities there might be, which
Yeah.
means that you can have a very specific business that serves a niche market, but what might it look like if suddenly your niche market grows, or suddenly somebody else comes into the field and they have a lot more money, or they have a lot more investors behind them? What would you do to make yourself distinguishable in that business,
Yeah.
in that particular market? So you have to
Hmm.
get ready for whatever might come your way. And that might not necessarily mean you have everything ready, just the mindset of being able to say, okay, I'm ready to shift and ready to look for the other opportunities here.
Yeah.
Another thing I think that people have to keep in mind for business is that you have to set the objective of the kind of business that you want to be, the kind of people that you want to work with and work for, the values that you have in your company, the objectives that you have, so that you have this path that you're following and you're not easily swayed back and forth with whatever might come your way. It's
Yeah.
okay to say no to a job. It's okay to say no to a client if it's not fulfilling what it is that you want to achieve.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you always have to learn that the hard way. The first time you say no to a client, which is possible money, is one of the hardest things you feel you can do. But if it's not in line with what your business is trying to achieve, sometimes it's better because that might take you on a different path.
Yeah.
And I think if you're looking to invest in businesses, I think like the same thing is to know the market, but to trust also in the people that you're investing in. You have to see if they have kind of a track record of, if they're brand new, they may not have a track record of revenues and a lot of proof of concept, but do they have an understanding of what they're trying to achieve? Do you feel like this is something that could um, fulfill a gap in the market? That could, do you trust the people that you are investing in? So you give them a chance to kind of show and prove what it is that they're trying to do, but know the market as well yourself, so that you're not putting all of your understanding of the business into someone else's hands. Have an
Yeah.
idea of what happens in that field, so that you're also able to see where things might be going right or wrong.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I think it's also key to give people a chance in business. We've just started, really, especially in the creative industry, collaboration is something that's starting to come up now. And before, you kind of held your business and your ideas to yourself in case someone stole it. We don't have a very big market sometimes, and so
Yeah.
you don't want somebody else in it. But if you want to diversify, if you want to expand one part of your business by collaborating with someone else, we've seen a lot of people do that very successfully here,
Yeah.
especially in the fashion business with the collective RW in particular. They have a really good way of working with each other so that they're boosting the collective as they also boost the individuals within. So be open to if you, this actually applies across the board. Work with someone who knows more about something than you do. So if you have a certain set of skills and you want to expand, or if part of another part of the skills are required for your business to grow and you don't know it, you don't have to learn everything all by yourself and do it all by yourself. If you bring in
Yeah.
people who know more than you do, they will only help you grow.
Yeah.
So that I think is also part of keeping that open mind, but it's a way of succeeding while bringing others on board.
Great. That's great advice. Perfect. So I think, I have like two questions left. One is, how did the COVID-19 pandemic affect your business? I know most likely affected your clients. Um, and how did it affect your business, and how are you dealing with it to, keep your business running?
Well, the biggest thing I think was that we had some projects lined up that were in line with Rwanda's goals to attract MICE tourism, to boost MICE tourism, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, and events or exhibitions. So we have the facilities that we built here, and we had the capacity to have very large conferences and meetings here, including the Commonwealth Conference, the Chogam Conference that was meant to happen earlier this year. And so we had some jobs lined up with those along that line of work. So with some people who were coming for free Chogam events and then during the event. So as when you have that lined up, you put it as part of your plan for the next few months. It affects how the income that's coming in. It affects what you intend to do with the business. Maybe if you're going to hire additional people, maybe if you're going to grow the business, get new equipment, whatever it was, you had things lined up. So we had planned to do, we had contracts or, and also pending contracts based on those events. So
Yeah.
when all of that was gone, that wiped out the plans for those months. And
Yeah.
so it meant that we had to completely re-strategize. So the first week and a half, the first week was just almost just being still, and dealing with not just how it affects the business, but what this whole thing was. Yes, so we
Uh-huh.
had some projects lined up that had to do with conferences and meetings and events. And as soon as all this happened and that all got wiped away, for the country, for everybody involved. And for us, the first instinct was just kind of to stop and everybody first stay home, make sure everybody was healthy. But it was nerve wracking for people's just personal. We didn't know everything that was coming along with what COVID was. So there was that, the fact that it was worldwide and that it was, people didn't have a full understanding of what it meant. And then of course work stopping and life stopping. And
Yeah.
so for the first little while, it was just kind of coming to terms, the first week or so, coming to terms with what that meant. We actually connected with um, a good friend and colleague who is based out of Sweden, but he's Eritrean, and he had connected a few people in the creative industry together to have a couple of Zoom chats just to see how's everybody doing, how can we advise each other on how to get through this, what are the next steps for us. And it was a really good forum for us to first start talking about what it meant to be in this situation and what it might mean for our businesses, because all of us were in similar businesses. And then there were a lot of webinars started happening. People were giving advice to businesses as to how to maintain. So start cutting back on your expenses, start seeing where you can maintain. So this meant some people had to, we didn't have to fire anybody, thank God, but they were talking about options like that. Like if you have to furlough somebody so they're on leave or they're working half days for the half the salary, if you have to move out of your office. We had a landlord who was very good, a landlady, sorry, and she was letting us pay half the rent because we used the space only part of the time. So it was figuring out now where are we cutting our costs, what bills do we need to pay to make sure things keep running, but also to keep as much cash flow within the business as possible. And so that's where this flexibility comes in. You have to now start looking at what are the options that you truly have to sustain your business, and then these practices can become habits for your business. It actually helped us really get to the bottom line and kind of change our business model around a little bit. We had been working with freelancers quite a bit before, and we were looking into possibly hiring full time. And now we only had the option of freelancers because also it just wasn't, the future wasn't isn't known.
Yeah.
So it's helped us move along though, because we've been looking at what are the ways we can change our current way of working to suit the circumstances and still get things done.
Yeah.
Um, we also did some outreach to people we've been talking to before, because in our line of work, when it comes to the studio part, that's where we do our creative work. That's where we do some of the projects that would have us moving around a lot, and we didn't have that option. And on the agency side, though, we had some clients who we'd been talking to beforehand who we reached out to and said, do you still have projects that you want to talk about? Do you still do you want to have messages that you want to deliver about this time period, what's happening right now? And a few people actually still wanted to communicate about what they're working on. People wanted to communicate about what they're doing as businesses right now during the COVID period. People wanted to offer support to other businesses, depending on who they were. And also, they needed to show how their project or uh, their organization was changing because of this.
Yeah.
So we actually still were able, sorry,
That's
we were
fine.
still able um, to do the job that we needed to do for clients who still needed to communicate about what was happening with them. For us, it was still an opportunity, and we're really grateful for that
Yeah.
because we managed to we cast a wide net essentially, and then we
Yeah.
got some providing and saying that they
Yeah.
actually do. And then we've had people reaching out to us now still because they have projects that they're working on. They've also had to shift. They've also had to pivot, and they want to introduce a new thing to their
Yeah.
own clients or their businesses. So it's
Yeah.
been okay. It hasn't been so detrimental, but we're taking it one day at a time because we don't know what's going to happen. As a country, Rwanda is doing really, really well in terms of keeping our numbers low and addressing the cases as they happen. So even if we're ready to open up, though, we know that the rest of the world might not be, and we're still a country that still relies on on the connections that we have globally.
Yeah.
So we may still be in this situation for a while
Yeah.
because other countries may not be as prepared as we are. So
Yeah.
we just have to take it at one day at a time. But it's really taught a lot of lessons in terms of how we have to adjust as individuals and adjust as companies and adjust as communities, because it's kind of shaking up everything that we know, and it's creating a whole new way of behaving in business and behaving socially. And it's just something that we have to, I don't know if I would call it a new norm, because who knows, next year we might be back to everything
Yeah.
business as usual. But it's just an interesting time right now to see how flexible you can be and how you can adjust to situations.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that, your business, you know, you're still, you're still in business. Most businesses were hit hard by the pandemic. And for you, fortunately, your business is in an area where you can be able to still serve your clients from home, where you can still, do the creative work on a computer.
Yeah,
And
I'm very, very lucky. Yeah.
yeah. So I think you touched on this, but like, what advice would you give to like business owners, entrepreneurs, or people who want to start businesses? Like, how can they? What are the things can they keep in mind post COVID-19 to
Mhm.
to thrive in business, or to uh, not be affected by something like this, should it happen again.
Post COVID, what you have to do as a business is look at, right now, people have seen what's convenient for them and what's not convenient, what helps their life move forward and what gets them stuck. And so you have to be the kind of service you, for us at Illume, we always take everything from the vantage point of the person that we're serving. So what if we are promoting an event or doing an event, we have to go through the whole thing. What happens when I enter? What happens when I experience the sound? Where am I sitting? Can I see this properly? If we're taking photos for a client, is this telling the story that I want my customers to understand? We have to put ourselves in the place of
Hmm.
those people.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is the same thing when it comes to any other business, is now that you've seen how the world is shifting, how the world is operating differently, now that you've seen um, how people consume your product or understand your business, or if you're brand new, now that you've seen how people like to consume products, like to consume services, then you adjust, then you match that need.
Yeah.
Don't make it more difficult than what you already know works best.
Yeah.
You have an idea in your mind of how you want to do something, but you've seen how people respond. So make sure you're serving that customer first. Make sure you're serving that client first.
Yeah.
Take it from their point of view, and then your business will be more successful that way.
Great.
Because you're not trying to push something on someone, you also experience it yourself.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that powerful advice for small businesses. Um, yeah, let's wrap up. I kept you for so
Yeah,
long.
we said we'd be here for a short time. It's already 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So, how can people
No, it's
connect
good
with you?
conversation.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, so they can find us as Illume Creative Studio, but on Twitter and on Instagram, we are Illume, so EELOOM. That's at Illume, so you can find us there. That's where we do most of our, that's where we showcase most of what we do. And then on Facebook, we're Illume Creative Studio.
Okay.
And so you can find us there, yeah.
Yeah, I would be sure to link to your Twitter, your website,
Yes,
and
please
all
do.
the good stuff that you do. Uh, yeah,
And
John,
thank you
thank you so much.
for hosting this program. It's actually really um, great for that diaspora and also for all of us here on the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and thanks for taking the time.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.